The Joe Rogan Experience.
Right? And then even in the subsequent meeting, so RFK said, give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, I'm on calls with the FDA. Then he's like, how soon can you come meet with the FDA again? So we set an emergency conference call. I do a call with the FDA. He said again, his Secretary Kennedy's team said, they're going to approach this with an open mind and an open heart, and they're going to have it's going to be a different tone than the last meeting. And I'm going to try and attend that call or have one of my staffers attend that call. Okay. The call went down at like 8 in the morning when he was in Alaska, and then another mole leaked to me because I have moles. I'm playing the game they play now. I'm not going to fuck around. And my mole called me and said they scheduled the meeting early because they knew he'd be in Alaska and they knew he couldn't be on it, and that call did not go well. It was a bunch of legacy FDA employees basically saying, we're gonna stay the course. We're not opening peptides up to the American people. And so I had to text his team and go, hey, the call didn't go well. And then they're like, our intel's telling us the same thing. And so he stepped in and said, this is a mandate. We are not going to dictate to the American people that they can or cannot use preventative care and peptides. This is a mandate. You need to figure this out, and we need to open accessibility, and we need to bring peptides back for the American people through safe, compliant compounding pharmacies, not black market, which is springing up everywhere. We're going to have another opioid crisis. I explained this to them too. Everywhere out there, there are peptides that you can buy online now, with no checks and balances, with no FDA inspection, with no validation testing, with no way of telling if there's any contamination, cross-contamination.
Or if they're even real.
Yeah.
I've had people buy ipamorelin online, and that's a peptide that when you do it, it has a very strong reaction, like you feel it in your body. Mm-hmm. Like immediately after, there's nothing. They get nothing. I'm like, well, it's probably bullshit.
Yeah.
You're buying bullshit peptides. But the point is, like, if Kennedy is not aware of all this, there's no way Trump is.
Yeah.
He cannot be.
No, they have too many things they're fighting.
He's literally involved in Rwanda having like peace talks with enemies that have been enemies for 20, 30 years, trying to bring them to the table. Mm-hmm. All the shit that's going on with Gaza and Palestine and Israel, all the shit that's going on with Ukraine and Russia. Do you think he even understands peptides?
Yeah.
Like, look at him.
Well, the healthcare system's complicated. It's nuanced. And the challenge is you have some of the best litigators and attorneys in the world on payroll for these big pharmaceutical cartels.
Of course.
And they fund 60% of the FDA. And the history of the FDA is that I've said over and over again, it's captured, but the truth is all of these organizations were born in captivity. They were born in captivity.
The news.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper, brought to you by Pfizer.
Well, they're even doing it right now, making it look like the world's turning. I don't know if you saw Bernie Sanders tweeted, RFK's got to go, all these people. But the truth is, last week, they announced the approval ratings, and RFK is up 7 points in the approval rate, the highest rating of any elected official. The American people are not turning on RFK. Even the CDC debacle that people are turning into the news is making out to be a debacle. You lost legacy employees. You lost this dude wearing sex gear and shit on covers of magazines who wants everyone to get Hep B. Nobody's saying you can't vaccinate your kids. Nobody's saying not to.
There's no reason.
I know, but all they're saying right now is we don't want to keep mandating without science. Yes. Without evidence. And we want to understand, is there a potential risk of side effects when we hit a child with this many vaccines before the age of 2?
Did you see the conversation that Kennedy had where he was talking about, they were talking about measles. And he said, we have had 4 deaths from measles in the last 20 years. Do you know how many cases of autism that we've had? And he rattled off that.
Oh, yeah.
Like the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, in California, it's literally 1 in 12 boys now.
Yep.
Do you know how insane that is?
He said that at the Texas legislature when Abbott signed off on the bills that I helped testify
But
for.
yet you're having guys like Bernie Sanders who doesn't know. Listen, I'm an old school Bernie bro. I love Bernie. I love the idea of Bernie.
Yeah.
Bernie doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah.
Bernie didn't know what the fuck he was talking about when it came to climate change.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. Climate change is definitely happening. Like, what are you saying? Like, what does that mean? Has the climate ever been static? Like, when you confront him on the details, he really doesn't know what he's talking about.
To me, what's frustrating
they're
is
narratives.
Yes, they're narratives.
So the narratives is that what we've done with vaccines is stop all the diseases. Okay, are you sure? Do you really know that? Have you ever looked at the history of the eradication of diseases and the introduction of sanitation, running water? Have you looked at any of that stuff? Nutrition, vitamins, have you looked at any of that stuff? Do you know anything about polio for real? When I tell people the polio statistic that 95 to 99% of polio is asymptomatic, it's one of my favorite questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, what percentage of polio?
Do you also follow that? So
the DDT story.
Boom. So
The
do
DDT
you
is
know that
crazy.
the CDC? There's so many fucking crazy stories. The CDC was created in World War II to stop the malaria spread. Okay, and the first thing they did was ink a deal with a little chemical company called Monsanto, where they began to dump DDT into all of these countries to try and kill malaria. And they spread an array of health issues that lasted generations and gave immunity and did all these things. That was the foundation of the CDC. And where it gets even crazier is guess how nobody talks about this shit. Do you know how where the CDC's headquarters is? Their headquarters in Atlanta was gifted to them by Coca-Cola. The CDC, to this day, is in a fucking giant building that was given to them by Coca-Cola. And in a FOIA request, there is a fucking email from one of the executives at the CDC, I don't remember, like the 70s or 80s, where they're literally going back and forth with Coca-Cola and saying they're going to do all they can to shut down this bad information on sugar. It runs so deep. And then you go to the EPA. You go to the EPA and its relationships with Monsanto. The EPA, in a FOIA request, one of the heads of the EPA with regards to glyphosate in disclosure documents literally sent an email saying, if I pull this off for you guys, you owe me a fucking medal. All of this shit's out there. I put all of it on the website. You can go find all of this stuff. It is there. And so systematically, FDA, CDC, EPA, NIH, every one of these systems have been built, co-opted, corrupted, and developed alongside industry. And even when you talk about chronic disease, so many people, there's a big podcast that dropped that if anyone, it gets into antidepressants. And a lot of people don't know this because I want to quantify peptides because you're going to have academia go, well, the difference is drugs are investigated and peptides aren't, and there's no placebo-controlled double-blind studies. One, there's a lot, and we can systematically break that down too. They just haven't gone through an FDA approval process because that costs $2 billion. Well, who established $2 billion to bring a drug to market?
What a great way to be a gateway.
Boom. It was established by Big Pharma. Big Pharma told the FDA, let's build this model. Right? So then they capture the molecule at the NIH level, bring it to phase 2 and 3 trials, bring it into human trials. The cost of doing that is not what they make it out to be. And then it's a pay-to-play system. And it's an obstructionist system that stifles and prevents innovation because if I'm a biotech startup or a compounding pharmacy or a stem cell company or a peptide company or anybody who wants to get into that space, I am going to be forced to sell my company at some point to Eli Lilly or Pfizer or one of these big conglomerates in order to get it through the FDA approval process. I can't afford $2 billion. And so what you've given Big Pharma is the keys to the Ferrari. And they control all the Ferraris that hit the marketplace. But then they co-opt and corrupt the data. So here's an example. When we talk about science, follow the science, follow the evidence. I worked for Eli Lilly. That was my first job out of college. We sold antipsychotic drug Zyprexa. Patients would come in and doctors would say, Brigham, I don't know what's going on, dude. This lady put on 30 fucking pounds in literally a month. This is not good. There's something going on here. And so when we go back to the main goal, safety, where was safety on that drug? out of 12 blockbuster drugs in the last, I think, 15 years of Eli Lilly's history, 10 of them have black box warnings. Jeez. Black box, the harshest warning you can get. The studies oftentimes don't represent long-term data, and the studies oftentimes aren't looking at all of the multi-faceted aspects of human nature and life, like comorbidities and what other medications are these people taking and how do all these impact each other. Average Americans on 4 or more prescription drugs. All right, so I want to lay out for the antidepressant because this one's crazy. How do you think we diagnose depression, anxiety, ADHD, any of these mental health disorders? And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that these disorders don't exist, and I'm not saying that there is not a medical issue with patients.
Well, it's all completely subjective. It's not like a test that they can give you, like, do you have syphilis?
Correct. There is no blood test.
Right.
There is no brain test.
Right.
There's no chemical brain test.
Well, not only that, let's be really clear. The established criteria, the idea behind it being that there is some sort of a chemical imbalance has been disproven.
Correct.
So
even in
not,
autopsies.
Yeah, it's not real.
Even in autopsies. And you know who perpetuated and created that narrative was Big Pharma.
Of course.
Big Pharma created that narrative, sold that story. It was never a serotonin deficiency. There's zero evidence to show that. So the screening tool we use to tell you if your child has ADHD was developed by a doctor in the 70s who was a consultant for Ritalin.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, jump to the 90s. Eli Lilly, Pfizer, everyone's launching antidepressants into the marketplace under the guise that these selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, are going to fix your chemical imbalance in your brain. The measuring stick to decide whether you're depressed or not was a questionnaire developed by a consultant for Pfizer. A doctor who worked for Pfizer developed that test, and the goal of the test was to simplify depression so simplistically that any primary care in America could prescribe an antidepressant through a simple questionnaire.
I bet most
they set
people.
The rules, they set the protocols, they set the everything, but there's no quantifiable data that says that actually
It's just a questionnaire. It's totally subjective. So what is this questionnaire? Can we take it and find out if I need pills?
Yeah.
Let's take it right now.
I can tell you.
Should we take it?
Yeah, let's take it.
Let's take it. I want to see if I need pills.
Let's see. Hold on. That'd be hilarious.
I've never met a single person that's depressed and has a great life. Is that weird? I never met a single person that's healthy, has a family, where everyone's doing well.
Yeah.
They have a good career that they enjoy.
Well, that's why what's that dipshit? Colbert is like, it's multifaceted in healthcare. Yeah, dumbass. It is.
Who was that?
Colbert, the Colbert Report guy.
Oh, that
He
guy.
just attacked Maha a few weeks ago and was
Did he?
like, yeah,
What
he
did
was
he say?
saying that to try and go after food and the drug companies is insane. And so if you follow even depression.
He looks super healthy. I like to see him in his underwear.
If you follow depression, when did we skyrocket in depression? When did depression skyrocket? It skyrocketed in the 80s. What happened in the 80s? We moved to an ultra-processed food diet. There is more compelling evidence that most depression is tracked back to insulin response and eating ultra-processed foods and sugary foods than any other aspect. We're all going to go through highs and lows. We're all going to have tough times. But when we're systematically, chronically inflamed and poisoning our bodies through our food systems...
You're exhausted and depressed.
When I was a Lilly rep and they're talking about Prozac and we're going to cure depression, and depression's caused by a serotonin chemical imbalance in the brain. We now know all that's hogwash. We don't really know what was causing the depression, the anxiety, and all these cascade effects. In their own retrospective studies of every SSRI on the market, what we now see is on a 52-point depression scale, SSRIs score 2 points higher than placebo. 2 points higher. It's not statistically relevant. It fails to differentiate statistically from placebo. There are two things that do differentiate from placebo. Exercise is 5 times more potent than placebo or an antidepressant in studies. Red light therapy is even higher, 2 times higher than any antidepressant that's ever hit the market. But now you've put a person in a chemical straitjacket where you have wrecked their system. You have now created more harm than good. And so step 1 in medicine, do no harm. right? Step one for the FDA, make sure these drugs are safe. They're not safe. Even there were lawsuits in the early days of suicidal ideation and violent thoughts because a lot of the pharmaceutical companies tried to hide that they were seeing in trials that children were having suicidal and violent thoughts in the early days of being on SSRIs.
Yeah.
Because it numbs the emotions. It shuts down the emotional response. It damages relationships. These are catastrophic things that you're giving these people for what?
They're also connected to almost every school shooter. Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah.